Hey everyone, in this video we're going to talk about Webpack prefetching. Over the past few months or maybe a few weeks, I've made a couple of videos about Webpack preloading, so I thought it would be a good reason to also make some videos about Webpack prefetching. Because we'll see Webpack prefetching is a very useful strategy when you are dealing with certain situations. So in this video we're going to cover the general concept of prefetching. We're going to see what Webpack does with regards to this concept, because we'll see that Webpack doesn't do anything new or anything special. It simply employs some browser APIs, but we'll see that later in the video. And I think there will also be a video where I'll be showing you how it works under the hood. I think it's a good thing to do, to explore. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to start with reviewing the main two concepts that are preload and prefetch. Both of them are browser APIs. They are also known as resource hints. And the main difference between preload and prefetch is the priority given to those assets that you want to apply those resource hints on. When you preload an asset, you are first of all declaring that that asset is very important, very essential, or simply essential for the current navigation that is about to take place. This implies that preloading an asset will give that asset a higher priority, as opposed to prefetching, when you instruct the browser to fetch certain resource during browser's idle time. So the priority is lower. It's not as high as preload, it is lower. And this can be useful for subsequent navigations. And I think those would be the highlights about these two resource hints. Now let's see what we have for this video. So first of all, I have a small example that I think it's better described with this diagram instead of saying some short code. First of all, I have to clarify what this thing here means. So the green rectangle defines a chunk. A chunk is just a file that contains modules, and these rectangles here that you see are the modules inside this chunk. As I've described in previous videos, a chunk contains not only modules that we use to structure our app, but a chunk also contains some runtime code which is generated by Webpack. So in essence, a chunk is just a file. Now, you can also notice that the chunk here appears with a dark gray color, and here it appears with a green color. The main reason is that this chunk, the main chunk, is the entry chunk. So this means that this chunk, this file, will always be loaded in the app. And that's why I made this with a different color, so that it declares that this chunk will always be loaded. Now, by using the import function, as I've also mentioned in some of my previous videos, using the import function will create a new chunk, which is a new file. This is also known as lazy loading in Webpack, or in maybe in other web bundles as well. So by using the import function, we will create a new chunk. But as you see here, when I'm importing this chunk, a chunk, or to be more precise, when I'm importing a.js, Webpack will create a new chunk for a, which is called a. Anyway, notice the difference. Here I'm using the Webpack prefetch magic comment, and here I'm not using it. Then, in order to make things a bit more interesting, I'm not saying complicated, but more interesting, this prefetched chunk or module will also prefetch another file, another chunk, and this one will also prefetch another file. I've chosen to use this example because it will be more clear to us what happens when we use this kind of strategy with Webpack. Now let's see what happens in the browser. So once again, we will end up in the end with 4 additional chunks due to the nature of the import function. Now getting back to the app, we simply have some buttons. If I now refresh the page, we have the main index.html file, which will always be loaded. We have the main.js file, which is this chunk here. And again, as I've said, it will always be loaded. And then we also have a.js, but notice that the type is text JavaScript. So it is actually not executing this module. So this module won't be compiled or executed in the browser. Simply its text, its content has been fetched and it will be stored in a cache. Just a small disclaimer, I think the cache doesn't work in this example because maybe I think there are some headers missing or something like that, so the browser won't know that this file is cacheable. But in a real world scenario, this shouldn't be a problem. But now, for now, just pretend that, or just trust me that the content of this file, a.js, which again is not executed, this module, but only the content is stored in a browser's cache or maybe in other cache. But for now, it is about the browser, so we'll stick to the browser cache. Notice that b.js or the b file has not been fetched because it is not prefetched. But also notice that its priority is lowest. So this means that the browser has done this request when the browser considered that it is time to do so. So we are not wasting too much resources with this request. Of course, we must not abuse this request, but you get it there. Okay, now if I finally load the file, first of all, notice that the type is script, so it means that of course the problem once again is that the file has not been cached, so it will actually make a new request. But just pretend that this file is coming from the cache, which will mean that in a real world scenario this file will come a lot more fast, because by coming directly from the cache, it means that we won't have to incur the cost of making an HTTP request, which is resolving DNS, round trips, compiling the script, executing the script, and maybe other steps. Since the file will come directly from the cache, the browser all that it has to do is to compile the file, the raw content, and execute the file, the content. And as a result, we'll see a.js here. We can also take a look at the sources and see that the only loaded modules are the one that we expect, main and a, because we have actually fetched the a.js file. Also notice that since a1.js is imported by a.js, we are seeing a similar request here, but this time for a1.js. And this, again, in a real world scenario, this will be a cacheable file, supposedly, and it will be stored in the browser's cache. So pretend that a1.js is in the browser's cache. This can also be seen by the fact that in the sources there is no a.js, and it makes sense not to be, because we have only stored its content in the cache. So this is mainly the power of prefetching, which is when the browser considers that it is time, that it has not anything more important to do, the browser will perform this fetching request so that when the actual file will be requested, the content will be served from the cache directly. And this is a very big advantage when you are dealing with large applications. So now once again, if I here in the console you can also see that the A module has been invoked. Now if I will load A1.js, you will see first of all in the console that A1 has been invoked, which means the module has been executed, and because A1 also imports with prefetch A2, we are seeing the same thing for A2, only the content has been fetched, the module has not been executed. And now finally, if I load A2.js, we should see that its content has been compiled and executed by the browser. So this is what I want to show you in this video, and let's also see what happens with b.js. So first of all, you will see that there is no request for b, but now if I click it, it will make a completely new request for b. So it will resolve DNS, make the request, TCP, SSL, and stuff like that. Then once the content is in the browser will compile and execute it. But again, on different scenarios, you might want to prefer that, but in other scenarios you might want to prefetch that module or that file because you know that the user is likely to use that for next navigations. So this was Webpack prefetching in action. Again, on a smaller app it might not make a difference, but in real world scenarios I think it's a powerful tool that Webpack gives us, and if you know the tool, you can apply it wisely, I suppose. So this was it for this video. I think in the next one we're going to cover what's going on under the hood. I think it will be a short video, and yeah, I think that was it for this video, and thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.